In many ways, it's unusual because this outcome was in some ways predicted. The polls were 50-50 and said either outcome was likely. I just don't know that everybody expected the British to vote for such a monumental change. And so investors are reacting accordingly. We know one thing they don't like is uncertainty.
Yeah, I know the Japan's Nikkei closed down 7.9%. I guess we're expecting a pretty rough day even after the closing bell today.
Well, I think so. And again, because we don't know what this is all going to mean or do, it could take years, experts say, to know the full economic implications. And in the short term, trade deals are going to have to be renegotiated and terms worked out. And that gives businesses and banks fits because they just have nothing to rely on.
We've even seen the markets go up. I mean, they've been strong the last couple of days because people seemed somewhat confident that the vote would be stay.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we heard that reflected in the comments of a number of analysts that we talked to, that this wasn't expected. I mean, it was a little bit expected, but nonetheless, I think still shocking and will take some time to digest. One guy told us, who advises a bunch of clients in New Jersey, says, well, uncertainty is just going to be a fact of life. Well, that is cold comfort to anybody who's trying to figure out what to do with their money.
Interesting, Aaron. I think a lot of people are wondering if this whole Brexit situation is kind of the quote-unquote beginning of the end, if you will, for the EU. I guess you've got a couple of other countries, including Greece, Netherlands, France, all at least thinking or talking about doing the same thing that Britain just did.
Call it Italy or Departicle or check out. All are possibilities now, and a number of finance ministers are meeting all over Europe to figure out possible next steps. Look, but none of those countries are in the shape that Britain's in. Britain's 3% of the world economy. It's in the second largest in Europe. Whether a country like Portugal or Italy could stand on its own is a whole other question. So each case is unique, but it does, I think you're right, open up the possibility of Europe breaking apart, and maybe Great Britain breaking apart, because the Scottish voted overwhelmingly to stay in Europe. And the Scottish leadership has already said there should be another referendum on breaking away from Europe. Northern Ireland, too, and Gibraltar. The Spanish want to take Gibraltar. So there are real questions going forward. And that's just kind of the half of it.
And this was the voice of the people, which certainly has to be respected. But I've heard some commentators say, it's possible that this was the divorce before they get remarried. Is it possible that they go through this process and then wind up finding their way back to the EU?
Sure. I think it's possible, although the signals seem to be from the European Union, you should leave as soon as possible because, there is some thought that they don't want this to be a prolonged divorce. My wife's a divorce attorney. I think she'd tell you the same thing. Why drag it out?
Yeah, right.
Pays the bills, but it doesn't necessarily make anyone feel any better. And so there's I think there's a feeling that's prevailing that let's try and get it done quickly, but no one exactly knows what that's going to entail. I mean, there are treaties and charters that spell out how things get done, but I think you saw in the statements today from the Federal Reserve, from the Securities and Exchange Commission, everybody's just kind of watching and waiting and trying to be reassuring that we'll provide liquidity where necessary, but no one knows how it's going to shake out.
Aaron, we appreciate your reports. Thanks very much for joining us on Utah's Morning News.